You're listening to Lights, Camera, Latino, the podcast, hosted by Ángel Fabián Rivera. You can follow us on our socials, Lights, Camera, Latino, and Ángel Fabián Rivera. Hola mi gente, welcome to Lights, Camera, Latino, the podcast. This is a place where we dive deep into the captivating world of entertainment with influential Latinos shaping the industry. My name is Ángel Fabián Rivera. You can also call me Ángel, and I'll be your host. You can find us in our socials as Lights, Camera, Latino, and Ángel Fabián Rivera. Today, I am honored to introduce a fellow Boricua. This is Erik Francisco Medina. He is a writer, filmmaker, and a creative from Canóvanas, Puerto Rico. Bringing a much-needed perspective, he creates thought-provoking projects that explore the experiences of people of color in modern America. Erik is also part of Collective Moxie, an innovative storytelling agency transforming diversity and inclusion practices across sectors including media, tech, advertising, and more. Erik, thank you for being here with us today. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to bring up fellow Boricua.
Right. Hey.
Yes. Erik, when did I think I've known you for like a year and a half for now, right? More than that,
I think a little bit more. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we could say two years and a half. Probably.
It's like 2 years, right? And I remember when I met you, because I met you through social media before I met you in person. Like, you know, when I moved here, I started seeing a lot of Latinos who were shaping the industry here in Atlanta. And I met you and I was like, who's this guy who's doing like a difference? You know, you were doing a difference, you know, and I was like, who's this guy? And it's also Puerto Rican, you know, writing and doing stuff and working, you know, with these big companies. How long have you been working with Collective Moxie now?
Yeah, so with Collective Moxie, I've been a little over 2 years. My 2-year anniversary was in November, so I've been with them for a little over 2 years. So.
Wow. No, I love that. We're there because I know that the work that you guys do there, it's amazing, it's impressive, and you know, this company is basically started like also like 2 or 3 years ago as well, right?
Yeah, it was very, very young.
Very young. You've been there since the beginning, basically.
Yeah. It's been 3 years old. It was started by Julianne Crommett, and yeah, even though it's been 3 years, we've been hitting the ground with a lot of big projects, big clients, and just shaping the industry, which is something that I'm very honored to be a part of.
Yes. Okay, so Erik, before we go back in time, I want to ask you, what's a Latino dish or a Puerto Rican dish you cannot live without?
I want to say tripleta, even though I haven't had like a tripleta in the longest.
Not a tripleta.
Yeah, I love tripleta. They're great, but there's something, I don't know. I really like weird stuff. My family is from Canóvanas, so we're a little bit, you know, in barrio hood in the mountains, which is a like interesting combination. But yeah, my abuela does this thing which is insane to a lot of people, but I love it, which is just fried plantain, you know, tostones with coffee. And it's just like this treat. Yeah, it's just like this little treat of like, you know, sweet and salty, very Caribbean, very stereotypical, but I love it. I love just having, you know, coffee with tostones. And it's like the craziest combination ever, but it works.
Tostones and coffee, okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard about that one. Oh my God.
I love it. So I would say tripleta and tostones y café.
So for everybody out there, a tripleta has it has
3 types of pork. Right? Pork,
chicken, I think.
Chicken, and I mean some people add like pastrami, you know,
like a beef, like some kind of beef like that.
Yeah, 3 types of like of meat, and then yeah, they add like, the typical ingredients of of a um of a sandwich,
A
lettuce,
sandwich.
tomato. Some people add like the little fries on
Oh
top of it, and
yeah,
then uh people add, I don't know, extra bacon, mayo, ketchup, and
yes.
then
You
sweet
name
bread.
it.
It's a lot.
You
It's
name
like
it.
it's a lot.
Yeah,
It's a
it has
lot.
like I always say like it's a like you hear tripleta, it's a big word. It is
Yeah.
what it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's very intense, but it's
It's
great,
very intense. So everybody out there has to try a tripleta when they come to Puerto
Yeah,
Rico, please.
absolutely. Yeah.
Uh, so Eric, let's go back in time. Let's go back
Yeah.
to little Eric.
Oh.
Growing up in Puerto Rico, like
Mhm.
how did how did you see yourself in these storytelling,
Mhm.
areas? Like how what sparked in you when you were growing up that you were like, actually I want to do something creative.
Um, well, I think it's just being in spaces where creativity was always supported. My family was very much into creative spaces. Um, my dad was a musician, is a musician. All of my aunts and uncles, either sing or act. And so I grew up in that space. But again, it was not, by any means we had, money. So
Hmm.
it was very much in very short, community plays. Um, my church was very, very artistic. It's a very artistic space. There was people who did theater, people who did dance, who sang. It was like very intentional. Also singing. It was just not random people grabbing
Hmm.
a microphone, but people really appreciate the arts, and yeah, my family, in the church, in the community. So I just was blessed to have and to be in different spaces where um, art was supported. And
Yeah.
I grew up in that space where it was just a language. Honestly, it was something that was part of my everyday. And then in terms of just storytelling, being Caribbean, the abuelo, the tios, my parents, specifically my great grandfather, abuelo Cico. He
Hmm.
always just used to make stories and tell us stories, and he could be talking about the first time that he ever like drove. He was like one of the first mailmans in our town, and he would tell those stories like it was like the biggest Pixar movie in the world. And I grew up around that, so I think that the
Yeah.
language and the love for storytelling came from that, for just being in very creative spaces growing up. So it
That's
helped a lot.
that's yeah, no, that's fine. That's interesting because not everybody gets to grow in a space that makes you feel comfortable, with the creative, in the creative
Yeah,
space area.
yeah,
Because a lot
yeah,
of people grow up, people telling them, "Oh, you should not do that," or "That should not be allowed," or this and that.
yeah,
And that's it's
yeah,
also beautiful to hear that story and to hear that you were, this was part of your day by day, right?
yeah.
Like getting to know what it is. Uh, Also with that, like you went to college for journalism, didn't you? Like,
Yeah,
so
my
what?
undergrad is
Uh,
in mass communications, but big part of like my undergrad was in journalism. The
why
efforts were
why why
there.
journalism?
It was just a form of storytelling, honestly. I was blessed enough to be part of a program, Universidad Durabo, now uh, Universidad Ana Geméndez,
Hmm.
Recinto Gurabo, I think. Um, and in that space, there was an amazing professor who I still admire so much, Maria Vera, who started just launching students into journalism. She's a journalist. And I was like one of the first. So
Wow.
that's the way that my first, I guess, medium of storytelling was journalism. And I did some, production here, some radio projects, but it was mainly just journalism. And I just fell in love with it because it was a form of storytelling. Quickly, I realized that I didn't want to be a journalist because I wanted to create stories, not tell
Hmm.
stories. So that's why I mean, I worked as a journalist in Puerto Rico. I was I interned in Telemundo Puerto Rico and Univision Puerto
Nice.
Rico, but I also wrote for Metro Puerto Rico and El Vocero and Nuevo Dia. So yeah, I got that opportunity. You know, I was a journalist. I started being a journalist and writing for newspapers when I was 17. So you know, I got that blessing, but I was like, okay, I love this, but I think I want to be a little bit more in depth into the storytelling process of, you know, creating stories, not just telling people what happened in that day.
That's interesting. That's nice because you still haven't run away completely from journalism
No,
because you've
not at
been
all.
writing. You
Not at
also
all.
write documentaries, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So that there's a big part of like that journalism in there.
yeah,
How does that feel like mixing these two things that you know of and
yeah.
do something with
I
it?
I think that journalism is still very present in my life. I mean, journalism is probably one of the most complex crafts. I respect
Hmm.
journalists a lot. I love journalists. I have my favorite journalists that I follow. But I think that as a storyteller right now, it helps me create just stories, not even documentaries, you know, but producing documentaries and following documentaries, but also just fiction. I research a lot. I ask a lot of questions. I know we have talked a couple about stories, and I'm just like,
Hmm.
oh, what about this? What about that? So I
Hmm.
bounce from people. I make sure that I'm following the correct story that resonates with people. So I think that having that background in journalism helps me just um, tell stories that I know that are gonna attract people, that are gonna be easily
Hmm.
digested by anybody who reads who reads and experience my stories, but also make sure that anybody from one of my big things about writing is that I want to make sure that my writing is understood no matter what class you're in. I think that sometimes, unfortunately, arts can be very classist. So I want to make sure that somebody with no education, um, with all the education in the world, can sit down and understand my stories. Because that's very important for me as a you know, as a storyteller. So I think that just helped my story. I think that, you know, have this superpower of like being, and I think a lot of fiction writers and storytellers who were journalists can share the same experience of like, oh, we know exactly how can we tell these stories to make sure that anybody from any background can sit down, digest them, and feel identified with them. So I would say that
Yes.
yeah, I don't, I'm blessed enough to have that lens of journalism to inform the way that I tell stories. So yeah.
You know, and I think it's much needed today, and you know, because a lot of people, you know, having, for example, like things like ChatGPT today, you know,
Mm.
where people themselves they say like, oh, I'm gonna write
Yeah,
this, you know,
yeah.
I'm the journalist, but I think
Mm.
people are forgetting of the real journalism, or you know, and going out there and actually getting to know what it's all about, you know,
Mm.
especially today in the media. And this goes my next question actually is you also mention and you also tackle the representation and people
Mm.
from any background watching something, right? Uh, what themes or issues do you feel are still underrepresented in media, and how do you think
Yeah,
you tackle them in your projects in terms of like
yeah.
backgrounds, different people of color, you know, all these different things that minorities that we still don't see as much. How do you tackle them in your projects?
Yeah, I think that in my personal projects and just for work as well, I think that um, there's a lot of things that still need to be shown in media,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that unfortunately they haven't been, a lot hasn't been shown correctly,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I think that we see underrepresentation and we're like, oh, we need to show this. Yeah, it's cool enough to show this, right? But the reality of our industry is it has to make money. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
make these issues digestible for anybody. It's not enough to just, you know, put a Puerto Rican flag in a project and assume that everybody's going to see it. Because that's not true. Not even I would, you know, say that not even the a typical Puerto Rican are like, okay, that's cool. It's cool that that's a Puerto Rican character. I'm not just gonna see it. I want to be like enticed by the story, right? I want to be
Mm-hmm.
curious and be like, oh, this is awesome. This is something cool. And I think that as you know, as we create a lot of these stories to ensure that we get more representation on screen, is that this representation can be easily understandable by anybody. And this is not a Latino project, it's just a story of this character who happens to be Latino. And I think that's something that, as storytellers, we need to unblock. I think that a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just, I'm going to talk about this and that are Latino issues. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But also a lot of people come to me to the industry to escape. So I think that and learn. I think that I'm a big believer that media should be a space for people to learn and learn empathy. But I think that when we get very specific with our projects, it will resonate with more people. So I think that the thing that is needed in this industry, is specifically of underserved communities and underrepresented communities, is specificity in the projects that we create. And one of the best examples, and one of the most, in my opinion, simple examples, is Encanto. I love Encanto, and we know that it's a Latino movie. We know that it's full of like Colombian culture and things that resonates with South Americans, Caribbeans, and Latinos in general. But that was not the main thing of the story. It was this young woman trying to connect with her grandmother, that she thinks that her grandmother thought that it was not enough. And that is a universal experience. I think that a lot of people can resonate with Maribel, because we all been in like a space of like, hey, maybe I don't think that my parents think that I'm enough. I don't think that my grandparents think I'm enough. So I think that's a universal thing. But then you code it, you paint it with like, actually, we can make this character Colombian, but we have to get specific. We cannot stay in these, oh, this is a Latino story and let's make it fun. And they're trying to navigate Latinidad, which I think that's something I'm going to speak specifically to Latinos, because obviously that's the community that we are. But like, I think that people should be specific. And in that specificity, I think that as we look for projects to support and collaborate, I think that also we need to create more space for specific stories within our specific experience, right? Of like, oh, what it is to be, I think there's a lot of cool stories that people haven't talked about what it is to be. I don't know. I was thinking
but even like, for example, like a Peruvian moving to the States, and then following a career of it's a doctor, and they move here to just be a doctor, like something like that. And I think you mentioned something very interesting, that I think the industry has lacked of that specificity, right? Because we see a lot of Latino stories, right? What is Latino? Latino is so broad. It's such a big word. There's no like the American view of Latinos is one thing, right? I'm tired of seeing what they think of Latinos is, for example, Mexican. And it's not a bad thing. What I'm saying is just like, the view that some people have is this Latino equals this.
Yeah.
Right? And there's so much more in there. And it's just how do we keep opening eyes, and how do we keep, using this form, which is the film, which is film. How do we use this form and actually entertain, but also educate people?
I think, again, the answer I think, in my opinion, the answer sounds super complicated, but I think it's just simple enough. Just make it specific. Going back to the example of like the Peruvian doctor, that's cool. I'm not Peruvian. I'm not a doctor. I'm kind of interested, but if you talk about a Peruvian doctor who's coming to the first time to America, who doesn't understand the language but connects with something like through food or something very specific, that have built this friendship with a neighbor who is like cooking, you connect with people. And I think one of my favorite movies is Julie and Julia, and I brought that example a couple of times, that I just love that movie because it's connecting through food. And I saw it at a time in my life where I was missing Puerto Rico when I just moved to Atlanta, and I was missing the food. And I saw that movie, and I remember bawling. Like, I don't cry at movies that much unless they're Pixar. But like, I was crying. I was like, why am I crying? Because it was this connection about a food, and that's specific. And I think that the industry has done a disservice to Latinos, I know a lot of people say, oh, Mexicans get a lot of representation, but again, the representation that also a lot of Mexicans get are scrap. because they
Mm-hmm.
don't give them space to tell proper stories. And I think that for all Latinos, um, we need to get more specific with our stories. And yes, they need to support, to give us Latinos more space, but
Mm-hmm.
also we as Latinos, we have to ask and have our standards of supporting better spaces and better movies. And there's so many amazing filmmakers who are telling amazing stories, um, that are we need them, but somehow um, uh, we support other projects that are just what Americans tend to think that we are. and
Mm-hmm.
and I think that it's just giving us Latinos, raising up the bar a little bit of what Latinos are should be expected to be. And that's on us as well as creatives. That's on us to see, okay, this I want to support this movie, be a part of this movie, write this movie.
Yeah.
But what are we doing in terms of like representation? What are we
Mm-hmm.
pushing?
We
The
adding to it.
bar.
We're
We're
pushing the
adding, and we're
narrative.
getting
Mm-hmm.
more specific. And there's so many people out there. And shout out to I'm gonna shout out one of my great friends, Erika Miranda, who has
Mm-hmm.
done so many projects about Latinidad, a Mexican American filmmaker. And she I don't know, Erika, just the way that she tells stories again is very specific. You see things like, oh, these characters happen to be Latino, but it's an experience about our family. Trash Trailer Magic was the name of
Mm-hmm.
the movie,
Yeah.
I think so.
Trailer Trash
And
Magic. I think it was the other way
yes,
around, right?
Trailer Trash Magic.
Trailer Trash Magic.
And I love that movie so much because you see this portrayal of this Latino family in this very unique way that you haven't seen before, and it's not at all about their Latinidad, but it's specific to that experience. And I think
Yeah.
that's what I love about filmmakers like Erika, that you nobody who you are, no matter who you are, because I think that also Latinos, we tend to be like, oh, that's a Mexican story, so I want to engage it, but okay, cool, no. Me as a Puerto Rican, I can engage with the story because the story is
Yes.
good. If it's specific, it's going to still resonate with me. And I think that's also something that we need to work about, on highlighting specific stories, but also cross culture experience, and
Yeah.
understanding that there's specific experience. I think
Yeah.
that
I think you hit the spot there
yeah,
because I think there's a lack of support, right? And you said it, you also mentioned it. I think there's a lack of support that because this story is not necessarily specifically to my heritage, I'm not gonna watch it, right? Because I've heard a lot of people, oh, because, for example, Blue Beetle, oh, because it's a Mexican story and I am Puerto Rican, I'm not gonna watch it. And I'm like, that's not the point, you know? The point
yeah,
of this is we're it's the first Latino superhero. Yes, we still have to support it because that's gonna be the first one of
and it's Blue Beetle.
more. Yeah, exactly. We
I
gotta we
love
gotta
this
start
Beetle.
somewhere, but we gotta start somewhere. And that was amazing that we had that project happen. It's so sad that it came out in such a point where the industry was down.
Yeah, of course, yeah, but I think that still, I think people should have like supported better. And I think
Yeah,
as Latinos that we're up and coming, or cemented writers, whoever it is, if you're in the industry and you love the story and it's a good, well made story, support it and share it on
yeah,
your socials. It's not that crazy to just share it on your Instagram and be like, oh my God, this is so good. It's super dope. And I think that's how we grow. And Blue Beetle is objectively a good movie.
mm-hmm,
I love that movie.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I mean, Blue Beetle is one of my favorite superheroes, so I'm biased.
Mm.
But um, I objectively, I think it is a good movie, and like I think that after the strike, people would have should have like gone back and still shared it, right? Um,
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing. I think that we have still a lot of work to do as a community, but it starts there. Just being specific, supporting good artists, and just telling, good. Again, going back to it, good specific stories,
yep.
and that's how we fix underrepresentation because we put ourselves at a higher quality. And obviously, I know that people of color have like and any under marginalized community because that includes
Mm-hmm.
women, as well. And but I think that, unfortunately, the bar is higher for
Yeah,
a lot of people. But I think that we should try our best to be, I don't want to say excel, but I think that we have to make sure that whatever we put across is well made and well intentioned. It doesn't resonate
Exactly.
cool, but it's well made no matter what.
Yeah. And it's all about steps, you know, like 20, 30 years ago, we were not here, you know, we were
Mhm.
not like represented
Yeah,
as we are today. So we also need to look back and realize that we've come, you know, a long way. It's still a long way to walk, but, you know, we've, you know, thanks to the people
yeah,
that came before us, they, you know, they shaped it for us. So we also have to be grateful for that, and we also have to be there for each other. There's no other way that we're gonna grow as Latinos in the industry if we don't support each other, if we don't add, and if we don't make things better.
exactly.
In every project that we do, like you said, like any project that you do, add something to it. You know, how can you make it better? How can you make it more real in terms of
Yeah.
representation? So thank you for talking about that, and also like you tackle this thing of underrepresentation, but you also do a lot of projects related to climate. What do you believe is the role of filmmakers and writers in addressing the climate crisis, especially that you were part of an initiative called Climate Cultura, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken?
yeah, yeah. Climate cultura, from Generation 180. I think that storytellers. I mean, this might be not a hot take, but for me as an artist, and I believe that just in any artistry,
Mm-hmm.
your art should say something, um, should inform something, whatever it is. You know, it's your choosing, but you should be able to say something. And I think that at least for you know, for me as a writer, Erik Francisco, me again, I think that my
Yeah.
art should be able to push conversation forward.
Mm.
And I mean, I'm drawn to a lot of these conversations about equity and class conversations and climate change and justice, social justice, because of the space that I grew up in. You know, I
Mm.
grew up in an island. I grew up in an island who, unfortunately, is going through a lot of processes of colonization, modern colonization, however you want to call it, of gentrification, about how our mountains and seas and are being just taken from people, to just build these amazing, quote unquote, amazing, and fancy, hotels and stuff like that. So I see how that unfortunately, um, affects our ecosystem and our culture,
Mm.
and I think that's why I'm so passionate about, climate change, but also just inform again. Existing in a colonized space. That's why I love
Mm.
justice as much, and not I unfortunately I know that the Christianity has been a role of, has been, um tainted by a lot of hardcore Republicans and conservatives.
Yep.
But when you read the Bible as inheriting, hopefully I won't get shot by saying this, but there's a lot of like positions in the Bible that are very socialist and very pro communities and pro justice, no matter who you are. So I think
Mm-hmm.
all of that informs my storytelling. So, to this day, I have a lot of conversations with my peers, of how their views were informed and they were radicalized. That's a word that a lot of people are using right now, because of things that they saw and things that they
Mm.
heard. And I want my art to cause that, and I want my art to spark a conversation for somebody who I think that climate change is, it's not real, right? But if I can showcase this in a film, they could see it a little bit in a film, that might make it a little bit more real. Same with like conversations about uh, social injustice, about gender violence, about, climate change, you name it. If I can show it in a piece of film, I think that it's more digestible for people. So I'm very passionate about that, and I think that again, I believe that my art should inform everything that I do. So,
So
yeah,
he
I don't
talks
know if
about
that.
yeah, no, he talks about who you are, and you know, you mentioned that is a great way for people to think about it. Like, is it real? It is real, right? And for example, when I watched 2012, I know this movie was about the end of the world, but in a different way, you know. But I
Yeah,
was like,
it
you know, I
is.
was a little kid, 2012, and I
Yeah,
watched this movie, and I was like, oh my god, I need to recycle, I need to do
yeah.
something,
I need to do
you know.
something.
So you know, it's part of it. Like it creates something, and that's what films should do. That's what any you
Yeah,
know form of
exactly.
media should do to
Yeah,
you. Like give you that motivation of like this is happening or this is real or you know it's
hmm
entertainment, but there's also something real in there because we're showing
yeah,
something about society today. And you said like your projects reflects who you are too. So it's like you're reflecting a lot in it.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's needed. I think that sometimes media is the first representation, and I'm gonna get specific about, like, for example, people. Um, Sometimes movies, and films and TV shows and whatever you want to call it, it's whatever medium, it's the first time that somebody will see someone,
Mm,
you know. And I think that's why I'm always very specific whenever I want to write and create stories and work on projects, is about how are we portraying people here. Are we
yeah.
portraying them like this because of this, or are we getting specific? Are we showing examples? Are we making sure that we expand conversations, because
Hmm.
that's the first time a lot of people will see, you know, somebody like like me, or like, you know, a friend, a colleague. It will be that first interaction. So I think that's, you know, we have the responsibility to showcase um correctly certain experiences,
Yes,
because I
yes.
mean, film is a universal language. Same with music, same with, yeah, with food. I believe that food is an artistry. So I think yeah, I
It
think
is.
we have a responsibility as artists to portray correctly certain things.
Yes. You mentioned something about you know tackling that in the project, and I wanna ask you what makes a really good screenplay.
Ah, um, a lot of things. But honestly, just to say it again, specificity. The more
Hmm.
specific you can get on a story, the more interesting it becomes.
Hmm.
I think that there's stories everywhere, right? But if it's something that you're able, you know, a lot of people can tell stories. I think the interesting thing is, how can you tell that story that no matter what, it will resonate, right? For me, one of my favorite stories is Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing,
Hmm.
Missouri. Um, and I'm not a mom, you know. I haven't gone through that horrible thing of like losing a daughter to that such a violent act. However, the need for justice is something universal. And you saw it with that character, of
Hmm.
how she needed justice, how she needed somebody to pay attention because they were not doing it, and that's something that we can all resonate. Same thing with, I'm gonna
Hmm.
use, you know, another Francis McDormand movie, Nomadland.
Hmm.
Um, that movie, it was one of the first movies that has made me feel a palpable loneliness. Like, I was able to feel lonely while watching that movie. And I was like, I don't like that feeling,
Yeah.
but it was so universal. There's been moments in our life that we have felt alone, right? So I think that movie did such a beautiful job of like displaying that. So I think what makes a good screenplay is getting so specific enough that no matter who sees this movie can understand the
Hmm.
feeling, and that will lead to every other emotion. It can lead to, like, going back to Three Billboards Driving Missouri, it can lead to the disrespect, the the need for justice, and then understanding what maybe a mother go through, understanding the,
Hmm.
what a mother of a parent of a victim um of I'm trying to think of the English word for a feminicidio, feminicide. I think
Yeah,
a
I think
feminicide.
is that right? Yeah.
I won't say, but you can like translate those things. Going back to Julie and Julia, um, there was this feeling of her trying to somehow, yeah, get to a deadline, but appease this like mentor that she has never met. Um, those things, I think makes it real for people. And you see a lot of these films, like, I don't know, thinking of like The Godfather, like the way of a family. of your family name. That's something that we can all understand, of like the pressures of, oh, you have to be this and that because you're representing your family, right? And that's universal. And I think that makes a great screenplay. Be specific enough that like anybody can understand it and be, oh, this is familiar. Maybe they cannot put the words to it because they don't have the language for it, but it attracts them because, oh, this is nice. And I think that's the key aspect of storytelling. Everybody can sit down and tell a story, go to TikTok, everybody's telling stories all the time, but it's the ability of telling a story so specific that people will stick to it and they will understand to it and they will be able to like break it down and make it them. And I think that's
I love that you mentioned that, because every good movie starts with a good writing, right? With good writing. Like without good writing, you can have the best actor, in the world.
Exactly.
But it's not gonna cover your tracks of having not a good screenplay.
Exactly.
But yeah, like I've seen that a lot. Like even from the acting part, right? Like me reading a script, sometimes I'm like, what am I reading? Like there's what is this? And a lot of people these days they like to leave things out of it, but it's like, I want things to be there. I want things to I want to understand what's on your mind, because I'm gonna speak your mind literally. You write something, and I'm gonna speak it.
Yeah.
So there's something there. Sometimes there's something missing, and I'm like, how do I do this? How do we do this? And you gotta have a conversation with the person, but sometimes there's no way back. You gotta change the script in order for it to work.
Yeah. But I think it starts with that. It starts with that basis of like building good specific characters that you know exactly where they are, even if you don't have that information as an actor, for example. If the characters are specific enough, you're gonna get them so quickly. And one of my, going to comedy, to choose another genre, Abbott Elementary, is so specific.
The way that they do it,
the stories in the world is so specific that anybody can watch that show and resonate.
Yeah, and you can, and I get related with every character, even though they're all different. There's something about each one of them that I'm like, oh my god, I feel that, or I did that. Oh my god, this reminds me of something, and that's the brilliance of it.
Yeah, agree, 100% agree.
Yes. Okay, so we're gonna jump to the roulette time, and we're gonna see what you get.
Song.
Oh, song. Okay. So guess the song. Okay, so the question for guess the song goes as songs. Where are you? Okay. Guess the song. What is the title of Shakira's iconic hit from the 2010 FIFA World Cup? Okay.
Waka Waka?
Yes, that's it.
Wait a second.
I love how you were like, wait, what? Am I okay?
What is
Is that easy?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do another one. Let's see what you get. Let's do another one. Let's see what you get. Oh,
song again.
I guess music is following you.
Yeah, it does follow me.
It does follow you. Okay, let's see what you get. Okay, which classic Selena song includes the lyrics "Bibidi bidi bibi bidi bidi bombo"?
Isn't that the name of the song?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, wait a second.
You got it right. You did. Okay, yeah, let's do let's do the last one. Let's see what you get. Oh my god. Let's see if you get. Oh my god. No. Okay, this thing really wants you to guess this song. Okay, so the last one for this song is let's change that. This 1999 song by Ricky Martin brought Latin pop to the mainstream and has the lyrics "She's into superstition." Can you name it?
Se Living La Vida Loca?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, I don't, yo,
Ah.
this is crazy. That was
But
too intense. That was too intense.
that was what you got. Then you got them all right. You see, they're easy. Uh, okay, I want to ask you something, Eric, about the work that you do specifically with Collective Moxie. Can you share any project that you feel proud of, that you're like, we worked, something, we really worked something in here to make a difference? Can you share, if you can share something about that?
Yeah, I can share some of the people that we work for, not specific
Yeah.
projects, but
Yeah.
I'm very proud of the work that we do at Riot Games. They are the leaders. They're leaders in the gaming industry. They have they're the ones who created League of Legends and Valorant, Arcane on Netflix. They're just amazing storytellers, and I think that they want to do the actual work of being specific enough for the stories. It's just a beautiful thing to collaborate with. I would say also the Trilith studio team. We run with them the state of the industry, and yearly we get industry professionals to just talk about the state of the industry of Georgia, and it's a beautiful event where you see people from all different walks of life and different positions in the entertainment industry coming together to learn and talk about important things. And I think that's just a beautiful thing to see. We also are involved with I'm mentioning a lot, but I think those are the things
Yeah.
that there are many things that we do at Collective Moxie, but also the blacklist, Georgia list. We're the first blacklist list that
Mhm.
is we were the first that is state specific. So we were the first. I think that there's now one in San Francisco, but we're the first Georgia list where we highlighted
Wow.
scripts created in Georgia, and that was the first time. I mean, Blacklist is one of the prominent organizations on like uplifting stories and scripts from underrepresented writers. And I would say that we get to do a lot of amazing work. We do, media strategy, we do global storytelling, we do how to engage multicultural audiences from any background. We ensure that your processes are correct, so your product is amazing and it's maximized for all people, and anybody can really digest and I feel
Mhm.
identify with your project. And we do that across industries, not only entertainment. We do that in sport, consumer products, nonprofit advocacy space as well. So we're able to be in conversations about media strategy and how we tell stories, because you're always telling stories, no matter who you
Mhm.
are. You always have like a story. I know people call it brand story, but that brand story is part of your entire ecosystem, and
Yeah.
you need to develop that from the start. So I'm very blessed that I get to be part of Collective Moxie and shaping the industry and shaping the world.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned all these different medias, because when people think about media in general, they only think about film, right? But they forget
Yeah.
about all these other, ways of storytelling. You said it yourself, even the gaming industry, it's getting big today, and just a lot of storytelling in there. That's why I love the games, because the storytelling part. And I love that companies like what you guys do are helping shape, these new stories and adding us
Yeah.
there, and adding people in general, right? Like telling their rightful stories, which sometimes is missed, uh, but thank you for what you guys do. Thank you, Eric, for shaping the industry. You really are making a difference with your everyday work.
Thank
And
you.
I'm so proud of seeing you every day, in a different panel with this and that, talking about the industry, talking about culture too, and educating people and advocating for not only Latinos, but just to have the representation that everybody needs, in media, which is the hardest part, right? And
Yeah.
it's a hard job. What you guys do, but I'm thankful that the industry have you. Uh, can you share something to those young writers who've been wanting to like write for the first time, or are afraid of
Mm.
writing?
Honestly, everything has been written under the sun already. It's just finding a new way of telling that story. I think that as a early writer, um, my fear was like, oh my gosh, I can't find that unique story. And when I wrote it, I was like, somebody else made this show already. But if you get so specific in the story, there's no such thing of like that story being told. Every single story has been told already. You see a lot of these movies who win awards, and they're just versions of previous stories. Obviously, I'm not saying to copy, but if you feel that you want to tell a story and you have a story in your heart, how can you make it more specific? And as soon as you get more specific, that story hasn't been told because it's coming from you. But I think that you run into the trouble of writing things that have already been written or created when you want to write for the masses, when you want to write for, this is what people want. No, you just need to focus on, this is the story that I need to tell. And once you do that, I think then your stories become more unique and more specific. And there's always an audience for that. So yeah, I would say get specific. Again, I've been saying a lot, get specific.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's what we get today.
Yeah, that's the theme of today. But don't be scared of writing something that you think that is already out there, because there's always a new way of telling that story. So
I love that. Before we finish, Erik, where can people find you? Where can people reach out to you? And what's next for Erik?
Well, you can follow me on my Instagram. I think that's the most active social media that I'm at. So it's Erik, at Erik from El Barrio. That's where I, mostly post about my projects and things that I'm working on. And you can also reach out, through there. I'm happy to talk to writers and creatives. I'm always enjoying those conversations. And what's next for me? A lot of good stuff. I cannot share many things yet, but I'm excited to just share those things and see where it will takes me next. So
that's beautiful. Thank you for having a chat with me. Thank you for telling your story.
Absolutely.
I think it's very important for people to know that Latinos don't just make it, especially this industry, we don't make it in one day. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of years of spending time doing this and learning and adding to your toolbox. And you've gotten to where you are today because you fought hard and you worked hard, and you started at some place and now you're somewhere else. And it's so beautiful to hear that and to hear how you came, to where you are today. So again, thank you for having a chat with us.
Pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, thank you for the work that you do, because it's very important that we validate that. Sometimes we need that validation, and I'm telling you, the work that you do, it's amazing. So keep doing it, please, and keep shaping the industry in the way that you can do it. The industry should be grateful for having people like you. I am.
Thank you.
So really, thank you for that. And before I leave, I always like to finish this with, when life knocks you down, levántate con más fuerza, keep fighting, hasta la próxima. This was Lights, Camera, Latino, the podcast.